Nated up, son.
What song should we play with today? I just want it to be a surprise for you all the time.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If you want it to be a surprise, pick something then.
All right. Okay, and then you'll sing it.
Okay. What?
What's the matter with your life? Why you gotta mess with mine? Don't keep sweating what I
Are we doing it to the same side?
be just fine. Check it out if I wanna take a dive. Hold me tonight. It's none of your business. And if she wanna be a freak, yeah, tell it on the weekend.
All right. Oh. Hello, YouTube.
Hello, YouTube. What's up, podcast listeners?
Welcome to all of our followers on Instagram, Tumblr, and Facebook. And I'm SK.
I'm Nay.
And
we're the Dicologists.
In today's episode 4, is it already 4?
I know.
We are going to have an impromptu video about this event that we went to a couple of hours
Hot ass mess.
back. Yeah. So my lovely wife here was nice enough to go with me to the New York Historical Society, which is on the Central Park West. And if you don't know what that is, good for you. And on Central Park West in the New York Historical Society, there was an event on the 4th floor. But what happened before we could even get there?
There was some event downstairs, and you could hardly get in, and they were checking bags, and it was just all a mess. And one of the girls we asked didn't even know the other event was going on in the building.
And it was a bunch of cultured people with their champagnes. There was a 10-year-old girl judging me for not being, pearls and earrings enough. And I was like, you should be in bed. And eventually we got our asses up to the 4th floor for the Penn Voices event, which was called the Female Flaneur. Okay, and just to show you the word itself, I wrote it right here, flaneur, and I'm not French nor care, so the female flaneur was an event about navigating the city, which was really exciting for me because my research is about the streets of New York and the kind of catcalls and harassment that women and LGBTQ people receive all over, okay? And so I thought, wonderful, I'm going to get to hear a bunch of female authors talk about this phenomenon. There's a bunch of white women and a woman of color, and, I don't really dip into the literary world all too much, but I thought it would give me something great for my dissertation. So we show up there, and how did you feel upstairs on the 4th floor?
It's just very weird, I want to say, I was the only black person there, maybe.
I feel like there was another one.
A lady from
aside
Lagos
from the staff
or somewhere.
Well, that was one of the women on the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's a woman of color. I'm not going to tell you their names because that's not this kind of call out video. Okay. I will make another call out video for Hypatia Gate, so watch out for that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you had a better weekend than me. And let's just get into it. So I have a couple of notes here, and then Nay will provide her perspectives on navigating this city. So I think the first problem that I had with this white lady, something Gornick, talking about the exhilaration she feels around being able to walk 6 miles for the last 20 years on a daily basis, which should already tell you something about her particular social position, just the ability to do that on a daily basis. And she kind of said that New York City is one of those places where it's so great to partake in street theater, where your kinds of people do all sorts of showtime and all sorts of, dancing and being loud. And I, as this lady Gornick, can just be like, ain't that quaint and ain't that nice. Look at them jump, without really recognizing that these kinds of people are not just performers, they're actually doing something
Right.
to make ends meet, right? And while you partake in street theater and whatever, are you really going to give these people money? Are you really going to allow them to perform at the Lincoln Center? Not so much, because of the way you prevent by you, I mean white people, and by you, I mean liberal, cultured folks. You're not going to, to have people of color kind of partake in arts and dance, ballet, and whatever, where they can then perform for you, somewhere inside, not so much outside. So what did you think of that, first of all? Like that kind of,
I just thought, at first when she said that, I was like, what does she mean? Like,
oh, let me
what is-
clean. I'm gonna clean.
I have things in my teeth.
I'm grooming. We're grooming. It's normal. People do this. It's okay.
That's what couples do, yeah.
Yes, couples do this.
I wasn't sure what she meant by street theater at first, like, cause she's talking about other things too, like the naked guy on the
Right,
street,
which I don't
so
think is part of street theater.
I
She
wasn't-
simply met a
it wasn't
naked man
clear.
in Union Square, and then
Yeah.
the cops took the man away.
Yeah, and
That's not theater.
She was surprised that they didn't like harass him, but
He was white.
yeah, so no trouble there. But yeah, but we see that kind of shit like all the time. Like when we're on the train and the dancers come on and one time we were on the train and there was a white family. They were obviously a tourist family, and
From somewhere
they were like
Northern Europe.
ridiculously scared, that these folks were dancing and their children
they were visibly stressed
were like
out.
starting to cry, and they were like all huddled, like
Into
huddling
the
each other
other
together
corner
on the
of the-
train, and everybody's looking at them like, what the fuck y'all doing? Like, it was the weirdest fucking
I had
thing
to tell them to
ever.
relax and that nothing will happen to them,
Crazy.
But that's definitely part of that whole, consumerism by white folks of New York City, even if they live here, and of the kinds of different, eccentric, as they call them, people that they come across. So the second issue was that the other author was talking about flaneur. So let's just get into that again, okay? As far as I know, and as far as she defined it again, flaneur is a word to describe a man, usually in the 19th century, that could blend into the crowds of the city, but observe the city and its life unnoticed and sort of detached from society. And he was white and, of course, young and, of course, privileged, upper class or middle class or whatever. And his gaze, constitutes all kinds of
Excuse me.
all kinds of novels and manuscripts, right? So she was asking if there's such a thing as a female flaneur, because it's always a man. And this particular author, Lauren something, do you want your cup?
I didn't bring it.
You didn't bring it.
Damn it, day.
And you know how much I hate when you get out of frame. So if
I
you're
know.
gonna cough,
Look, I'm gonna
you
cough my head off
in
in
frame.
front of you guys.
Okay? It also shakes the camera, which drives me nuts. Okay,
Okay.
so do you need to go and get something from the kitchen?
Yes.
Will you do it carefully?
Yes.
All right, so
Roger
I'll
that.
just continue talking. And so, because she wanted to talk about women in the city, she came up with the term flaneuse, okay? And her writing is about New York and Paris and, important metropolitan locations such as that, okay? So, she was talking about how perhaps back in the 19th century, because the streets were cobblestone, it was a matter of women's restrictive fashion and them wearing these heels. That was the reason for the fact that women's freedom is limited on the city streets. And not a single mention regarding the fact that the reason why women don't have freedom of movement and have difficulty with navigating actual city streets is men who harass them, who make them feel unsafe. And no matter what kind of shoes you got on, you have a problem. And whether it's 19th century or today, there's a significant issue with who the streets belong to, right? And when she brought that up, the woman of color mentioned that we should also talk about how black people are policed, and for example, she can walk freely in San Francisco, and I was kind of like, can you really? But all right, you know, she's light-skinned enough. And her son, she said, is black, and she worries about him because he's tall, wears hoodies, and like, if you understand what's going on regarding police brutality, you know why she as a mother has this very justifiable fear. But on the other hand, by like sort of, you know, collapsing the conversation about how men too are policed, we forget the gendered and sexualized aspect of this, because what about black women? What about black lesbian women? What about black lesbian women that look like you? You know, because you are still facing the threat of police brutality, and there's just no space to talk about a woman like her navigating the city. So we're gonna give her that space now, because we bounced from the event after a half hour of this mess, and there were enough people interested in this that they took our seats. And I was
like,
just
when
like,
that lady
see you
did
later.
mention the thing about her son, then the white lady was
She got super defensive.
Yeah, she was like, oh, well, yeah, some people, you know, maybe can't be in, you know, certain spaces.
She said
was
race
like,
is perilous.
Yeah, and she said, but we're not here to talk about men anyway. This is, you know, this event is about women. And like,
white women
like, way
like
to
her.
deflect.
Yeah, she couldn't form a coherent sentence in response because she just got so flustered, which is part of how white fragility operates, right? White people are confronted by this very nice lady, not by someone like me. She basically kind of just said, but what about my son, right? And the conversation went nowhere, and it had a chance to go somewhere, you know, around race and policing of certain populations in the city. So so that was the other thing. And like, again, continuing to come back over and over to heels and perhaps skirts, you know, and
you know, women just need flats,
Right.
according to her. That was the answer,
And
right?
I just feel
and
like
that there's
I should
no catcalling
hang
in New
up
York City.
my dissertation and work in Payless.
What are you doing?
I know. I don't know what I'm doing, but like, I'm changing my path here, right now. I'm having an epiphany of handing out flats to every woman, and that will solve the problem of male harassment, right? And I feel like, let me look at my notes. You know, I just wrote no grasp on reality. I really feel like there are people who attend the New York Historical Society, is it called? I have no idea. And they go to these parties and they have these events and they want to talk about this one huge difference called women already, and they just don't live in a reality that we live in. And so I was in the bathroom ranting about their warped sense of reality, because it's just not what it looks like for us. And by us, I mean people who walk the world assumed as women, people who walk the world assumed as gay women, because bisexual folks, asexual folks, polyamorous folks are erased from the city streets, not to speak of non-binary people and gender non-conforming folks, right? And to walk the streets as a black woman, for example, right? Or as a mother, or as someone in other precarious conditions like fat women and disabled folks and older women. And because one of them was older, she talked about age and said that there's a kind of freedom that comes with becoming older and no longer feeling harassed by men, which is a very sad conclusion in the first place. And the other sad one was that she talked about some person who once wore men's clothes on the streets of Paris or something, and she realized that she had this unrestrained way of walking around, and they were celebrating this as if that conclusion isn't itself one of the most depressing things you hear, that the reason you can have unrestrained movement is by wearing men's clothes and by having folks assume you're a man. But what happens when they assume you're a man? Like, just take me through how it feels to you know, don't you feel exhilarated? Nay, don't you feel incredibly free when people say sir to you? No?
Bruh. Get your life. Like, that's not...
I'm sorry, is that some kind of ebonics that you're using?
You're stupid.
Does it stand for the word brother? I too feel you are my sister, and we are in this together. Solidarity, man, sisterhood. Let's talk about it.
Oh man, but no, it's you know, I mean, it's offensive to me. Like, I really don't get that. But we had a conversation before when I said, like, if people can't sexualize you, then they kind of just like take your, identity away. Like even with men, like if they can't sexualize women and like, by, what they wear and like seeing, their bodies, then they just automatically assume you're a man if like you're not in any of those type of, clothes. And so like
which
it's
is also
just,
depressing because
it's
you're
just
either objectified
ridiculous.
or made invisible, and as a black woman especially invisible, because you said folks just run into you, bump into you, are in your space a lot more than they are in mine.
Yeah.
Even though I too suffer from the usual, men taking up too much space, in terms of their language, their body language, their sort of positioning. This is an ongoing issue on the city streets, right? And to ignore it was just really unfortunate. And we left because it didn't speak to us. So, we wanted to make this video in order to speak on behalf of those for whom events like that are not relevant.
Yeah.
And to talk about the fact that navigating the city as lesbian, queer, trans folks is actually a very scary process, because the streets do not belong to us, and we do not have unrestrained freedom, and it doesn't matter what shoes we wear, and we don't feel exhilarated at all by walking around next to men talking about their chicks, talking about their bitches, and talking about their hoes while they have women next to them, and you just want to be
laughing
like,
at them too.
and you just want to be like, how can I help? Are you okay? Because you're not okay, and it's never gonna get okay until we admit what a harmful presence men have in city streets. Anything else you want to kind of say on this subject?
Yeah, I remember, just the whole thing in general. I remember we was talking about, like, when she was saying that, she's able to walk these 6 miles for 20 something years, and like she feels safe on the street and it's freeing and whatever. And we were like, I really wonder like what women she's talking about, right? Because like it has to be particular kinds of women that feel safe on the street.
I just remembered
like
my
at
final
any
point.
time at night, any time of the day.
I remember.
And I was like, we should ask her like what women, and she'll be like women, and they're like, yeah, but like women in particular, like are the women like you, or are they black women, are they whatever?
No,
and like
it's too
really
much.
get into
It's too much.
what kind of folks she they feel that really
and remember,
feel
they
safe, like the
mentioned
streets are theirs.
women of the street, and they said that they, by becoming flaneurs, they want to be a woman of the street, forgetting that historically women of the streets already had a place, right? These were undocumented women and immigrant women, black women, poor women, older disabled women, and street, sort of sex workers, right? So there have been women on the streets. They just kind of mean themselves, and they sort of keep it very restricted to like the conversation about heels, the conversation about being brave enough to walk, or the conversation about aging gracefully enough to go and feel more freedoms. But there have always been women on the street. You just dislike them, and they are invisible. And to this day, walking while black is a conversation on Twitter. Walking while trans is a conversation, especially as black trans women, and that's why we have what we've got going on in terms of trans misogynoir. Oh, I didn't write that down. Why don't you tell them what that is? Go ahead, Nay.
I, folks, am not the sociologist.
Don't worry, sociologists don't know this word either. But I'm going to write it and explain it to you right now. Yeah, I really gotta get better handwriting. Okay? Transmisogynoir is a word that talks about trans women facing misogyny, especially when they're black. So this is a very specific term that I think is incredibly useful and incredibly productive for us as academics and activists to apply to a very specific population that walks city streets and lives alongside us and is under attack. So when we have, it's like a perfect summary of what we've been talking about. If you combine a conversation about how specific women cannot navigate the city safely, even though all women don't have that privilege, put in a conversation about race and like mention that black women have a very particular experience. So as trans black women, then facing misogyny, facing racism, facing police surveillance and brutality, you know, facing murder and violence, like that is not the story of these few people that were sitting there on this panel talking about feeling exhilarated
right, to be
out there and to be walking. You know, so for me, it's just a constant process of thinking about how different it is for different people, without forgetting that many men are in no position to walk around safely as well. But when we have a conversation about gender specifically and about sexuality specifically, then cis het men are the reason that many of us feel unsafe to this day. So that's it for this video, right?
Yeah. What do we got coming up next video?
We don't know, because now apparently we do videos when I get angry enough and riled up enough.
It's a surprise!
Yeah, and that basically happens all the time around here. So, yeah. So, later! I hope that was recording, kitten.